Hello again, it's Drew Badger here, the co-founder of EnglishAnyone.com. I'm really excited to see you again, to be back here on YouTube making videos to show my lovely face and be sitting at the park and enjoy the weather as I get to have a lovely conversation with you. It's been a while since I've released a lesson, and I'm really excited to begin kind of changing the way you think here. This is a really important lesson for me, and when I'm coming back now, having not been here for a while, I really want to give you something very powerful and something important that you can take away, that you can start seeing a lot more improvement in your English fluency with. So today I want to talk about the number one reason why most students, and probably yourself, are not getting fluent. So let's get into it. The thing that I hear the most from students, it's not how to improve my grammar or how to improve my pronunciation, even though those are things I do receive. The number one complaint I hear is this: why do I understand what you are saying in videos? And this is people talking to me, so why do they understand me, but they can't understand what people are saying in actual conversations? Now, this is what I call the fluency gap. The fluency gap. You've got basically most students over here, and they can read and they can write pretty well, and they understand the slow, simple, easy English that I'm using right now. There might even be a few complex grammar points when I'm speaking right now in this very lesson, but most of them are pretty easy to understand because students have heard them before. The difference is that I'm not using all of the crazy idioms, slang, phrases, expression, quotes from movies, and all of these other things that really come with native, fluent English. So this is the number one reason why students are not getting fluent. It's not that students can't find more information about English, because it's all over the place. Native English is all over the internet. You can even watch right here on YouTube. You can click and watch any number of a million other channels and listen to native English. And it's not that you can't find grammar points or idioms or lists of other vocabulary words to practice, because there are millions and millions of websites on the internet that help you do all these things. So what's the real problem here? What's the real issue? Because it's not finding information. There is even too much information on the internet, and most students really don't know how to navigate it. So the real issue here is, how do you get from here to over here? It's such a simple thing, but most students don't really think about it because it's not how they learned English. They've learned a few kind of phrases that get them from the zero level to the kind of textbook English level, which is what I like to call it. So you begin with no ability at all, and you start learning some grammar points, you remember some words and phrases, and these are all of the slow, easy to understand, simple words and expressions that you would find in a textbook. It's also the same kind of English that you might hear from an announcement on a bus or a train or an airplane, where it's kind of the same thing that most people are used to and the same thing that most people listen to, and it's really easy English for most people to understand, even if they're not native speakers. But this English over here is something completely different. So it's got all of the kind of grammar is the same for the most part, but we've got slang and idioms and all kinds of other expressions that we use in the language. So the real problem here, the number one thing that kind of the number one reason why students are not getting fluent, is because they don't know how to move from here over to here. That's it. And I've been thinking about this for so many years, and it's really kind of becoming crystal clear for me now as I talk with more and more students and try to figure out what exactly the problem is. Because it's almost like I get the same email every single day, or the same comment every single day from tons and tons of students. So how do you get from here to there? And the question they're asking isn't really how do you do it, it's more, why don't I understand? Why don't I understand English? I've been studying English for so many years. Why don't I understand? And it's really, really frustrating. Now, this is exactly the same thing that I encountered when I began learning Japanese. I went through the exact same process. So I started down here without knowing anything, and I try to use my textbook and study with that and remember some flashcards and all of those kinds of things that people usually do for learning English or for Japanese or any other language. But I did these things and I basically got to a point here. I call it kind of like the textbook English plateau. A plateau. A plateau is like a mountain, but the top of it is shaved off flat like this. So it would be kind of going up and straight across and down like this. A mountain continues to go up, but a plateau looks more like this. So what I see in my own fluency for learning Japanese and for most people that are learning English, it's the same situation. They get to a certain point and then they can't quite get to this level up here. They don't really know how to do that. They don't really know how to make this jump. Now, a lot of students, what they'll do is they'll try to actually jump from over here to over here. They're trying to use their textbook English skills to jump all the way in one step over to here. And this is a huge problem, and this is what creates the most frustration of all, because students are so annoyed and they're so angry because they spent all this time studying, but they don't remember anything. They don't understand what people are saying. They try to watch an English TV show and maybe they understand some of the grammar and some of the words, but a joke, they just really don't understand that. I was actually speaking with my wife about this very problem yesterday. Now, her English is actually really, really good. And her English is even way better than my Japanese, which isn't saying much, but her English actually is way better. And she understands, even from learning from me and from watching a lot of TV shows that she likes to do, especially English programs, she learns a lot of phrases, but there are so many that she can't understand in a lot of the programs that she likes to watch. So as an example, I asked her about the phrase, kick the bucket, kick the bucket. Now, this is an idiomatic expression, and that just means a phrase that literally means like you could kick a bucket, but that has nothing to do with the actual meaning of what you're trying to say. So I was asking her, do you know what the phrase kick the bucket means? And she thought about it and she was thinking, well, she was thinking literally. So, oh, you kick a bucket, but that doesn't really mean anything. So if you're watching an English TV show and you read the subtitles of something, even if you have the subtitles of a program and you read something like kick the bucket, you don't know what it means. Incidentally, if you don't know what it means to die. Last week, my grandfather kicked the bucket. Kick the bucket. So this is a native English expression that you will not find in a textbook for the most part. I haven't seen it in a textbook. Maybe you have. And you will see some things like that. You'll see videos maybe that I'll produce, that other people will produce. And there are plenty of expression places that you can go online to find lots of idiomatic expressions and other weird phrases and slang that you can study. But for the most part, if you don't learn those things, you're not going to be able to make this jump. So getting back to this serious frustration here, trying to go from this level over here, the current kind of plateau textbook English, trying to jump all the way over here, it's basically impossible to do. And that's why it's so frustrating for students to learn. And so frustrating for teachers like me, because I really want people to know what it feels like to get over here. Now, I live in this world. I live in this world of kind of native Japanese, and my Japanese isn't perfect, and I may not ever understand everything, but I can watch movies and understand, quite a bit of what I'm watching, and I can have actual conversations without fear. I can meet new people. I can practice speaking. I can go into places that I wouldn't have normally been able to go into when I was just learning the language. And that's because I've crossed the fluency gap. And there's a specific way I've done that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in this video. But first, I want to give you an analogy. So back when I was learning how to drive, my first education was in school, and I had to take driver's ed class, which is just a regular high school class, and then I would have a test, and then if I passed that test, I would go to range. And range is where you would practice at a kind of like a parking lot, really. It's basically a parking lot with a few cars, and you would have students sitting in all the cars and just driving really, really slowly around in circles, and maybe they would do a turn or practice parking or something like that. But after you would kind of learn to do that and you would pass range, then they would let you onto the real streets and into the real traffic. And this is where people freaked out. So a lot of people that hadn't had the practice, even if they're going around in circles, it's a much different situation than actually pulling into real traffic, and especially getting on a highway and going 60 or 70 miles an hour. Now this is the exact same thing that you get from people that are trying to learn English. Again, this is the fluency gap. You've got someone that's just learning how to drive a car over here, and then you've got seasoned veterans. These are the people that have been driving cars for a long time, and when you try to jump over here, there's going to be problems. So what I did, how I kind of learned driving differently, is when I was kind of learning range around that same time, my mom would take me to an empty parking lot. And so we would drive around, and she would also let me drive on the streets at night. So I would actually be able to go out and drive around and get the feel for what it's like to drive just on the streets, stopping at traffic lights and turning. And we would even try driving on highways, but we would drive at night. So if you notice what I'm doing here, we're learning in slightly a different way and using more steps, more practice to get from here, where you are at the basic level, to up here at the fluent level. So when I had my chance to go from range and to drive out of the parking lot into real traffic, I was already prepared for that. Now the same thing happens for English fluency if you learn the right way. And this is exactly what I do with EnglishAnyone.com. So some teachers are really focused on pronunciation, others are focused on helping you learn grammar or learn particular phrases, but I've learned and kind of understand a lot more about what I do, what Drew Badger does as an English teacher and a speaking confidence expert. And what I do is really help students make that jump to get from here to over here, to cross the fluency gap. And really the best way to do this is to move from individual steps instead of trying to jump from here to over here. And jumping from here to here means trying to sit down and watch a movie, but it's frustrating because you have to look at your dictionary, and even if you can read or understand a word, you won't understand the idioms and the phrases that people are using. So it just makes you more frustrated. It decreases your motivation, and then you stop wanting to get fluent because you just don't understand how to do it. So what I do is help you take individual steps like mastering grammar, learning phrases, the pronunciation of words, and also how to understand the kind of cultural ideas and jokes and things that you would see from movies, so that when you see them all in native English, it becomes amazing. It really changes the way you think. So this is what I do, and this is the solution to the number one problem that most students have when they're trying to cross the fluency gap. So what I've done is create a fluency bridge. It's just a whole different way of learning where you're not trying to focus on a particular kind of word or phrase, but you understand the real words and phrases over here, but you learn all of them first before seeing them in native English. So the analogy would be, imagine watching your favorite TV show, but before you watch it, you know all of the grammar and all of the phrases, all of the kind of cultural ideas and references and jokes and things like that, so that when you finally watch it, all of it becomes crystal clear and really easy to understand. You've also learned how people blend sounds so that you make sure you understand, that person is saying this. So before, when you're just using your textbook English understanding, you can't really figure out how to make that connection. But now that you have understood all of these things, because you've gone from here in little bitty steps all the way up to fluency, you can become fluent much, much faster. Now I have a program called Master English Conversation that does exactly this. And when I'm thinking about really what exactly Master English Conversation does, because even people that create something, they really have to go back and think about really the best way to explain what it does. And something as complicated or complex as becoming a fluent speaker, because there are so many different pieces of it, really the complete idea of Master English Conversation is this bridge. It's not a program for students that are trying to pass a test because they don't really want to learn how to speak anything. But if you are stuck here, if you are at this plateau level, if you are trying to drive a car but you are really scared about trying to drive over here because you just have no idea how to do it, you need a bridge. And that's where Master English Conversation comes in. If you are the kind of student that is struggling with learning and you've been trying to learn for a long time, You understand all of the slow, easy English that I'm explaining right now, but you have no idea what I'm saying when I'm speaking quickly at native speed. If you want to be able to learn how to do that, you need to take steps to get there. You have to stop trying to jump all the way here. We call this taking one step back to take 2 steps forward. So you have to take your time and approach fluency in steps. Learn all of the real English idioms, the real English phrases, all of these other things, and then you're well prepared for conversations and how to speak. If you're interested in learning more about the program, it's the absolute best thing you could have as a student of English if you really want to become a great speaker. Click on the link right here. You'll see a lovely little button below me, and you can click on that to learn more about the program. It'll tell you absolutely everything about it. It'll also tell you about my journey to Japanese fluency, the 5 poisons of traditional English learning methods. It's a fantastic program designed specifically for students that want to cross the fluency gap. So come down and learn more, and I will see you at EnglishAnyone.com. Bye-bye.